Bill surprised everybody, from family to the council itself, when he mentioned that he would actually show up on Earth and be in the council chambers personally. Walking into the council chambers, he stands tall with Aya in full-figured android form next to him as he walked. Ever since Bill held his ground to protect Aya and her ship, he has been actually a living legend amongst all of humanity. Utilizing technology to the best of the abilities, one would look and think that he's only 25 years old, with a body so packed with dense musculature that it can actually be seen through that suit he's wearing. Yet to this day, he still refuses to wear a tie. As he puts it, it's an ancient symbol of submission from a king. It's one of the traditions that should actually fade into history. That's always been his answer. As Bill finds his seat, a tall figure walks up to him, a fur-covered face that is an amalgamation of human and canine, looks down to him before giving a toothless grin. The smile is a bit creepy, as it's not normal movement for this species, yet showing one's teeth has always been a sign of aggression for their species, so the odd grin is going to have to do. The fur-covered hand with 3 main digits and opposable thumbs is stuck out. In that moment, the Kitsune male, introducing himself in his own language, which had to be translated through an earpiece. The actual language was a mix of yipping and a chicken clucking, almost like the Cadbury bunny. Realizing who it is and realizing he can't pronounce the name, Bill shakes the Kitsune's hand, remembering this was the quote-unquote elder from before, even though he looks very young. Bill introduces himself, and Aya next to him, and he finished his lines with, "It's good to finally meet you, mister." The furry male turned his head slightly as the translator in his ear relayed the words. Then he seemed to find it funny and said, "You don't have to call me mister. The world here just calls me Hank." When the meeting began, everybody had exactly one thing on their mind, and emotions ran hot, yet level heads tend to win over raw hate, usually. As the meeting went on, they discussed how they could take the newcomers' homeworld, how they could free it. The battle plan was simple and fairly straightforward what they came up with. The occupation forces would be allowed to leave peacefully, provided they leave the planet, and of course the local population, behind. Only take themselves and their ships and screw off. If need be, the fleeing ships would be searched if there was a belief that these newcomers were going to be somehow dragged off as slave labor or something. If the occupation forces refuse to leave, the planet will then be taken by force, at which time any enemy survivors will have their fate decided by the population. That is, if they survive the invasion of humanity. The thought of jumping onto a ship right after this meeting and rushing off to his homeworld made Hank's fur tingle with excitement. Yet, there was an issue. How do they hide the fact that they're human? It was brought up as this is an essential element, as the reliance on the trash dumpers is still a thing. Also, no one knows if humanity is actually strong enough yet to take on the whole of the universe's different species. To this end, any human that is going on the mission, from the grunts all the way to the admiral, will be required to wear full exosuits at all times. This does not have to be power armor, as some stations really don't require it, but they still need something to cover them, head to toe, fingertip to fingertip, everything. Also, only human-created vessels that were made either on Mars, Venus, Earth, or any of the colonies can be allowed. Along with this, only homemade AI will be allowed to go. This way, the silhouette that's actually scanned will be completely foreign to their adversary, and they won't know where to go or where they're coming from. Just like jumping in from all different directions, so they cannot track where the jump originated from. It is said that if a vessel is colonized, then the Cole Protocol will be enacted. Even the mention of this protocol is enough to make the room vastly uncomfortable. Hank leaned over and asked to the one next to him, "What is this coal protocol?" And as he's explained the steps needed to be taken by everybody, you could see Hank's tail, which was usually right up in the air, get lower and lower and lower until the full realization came in and his tail actually touched the ground. With the plan laid out, it's time to start talking everybody's favorite, logistics and the specifics. As far as the specifics are concerned, it's clear to even a blind man that new ships are going to need to be built. As vast as the human fleets are, they do not have the carriers and dreadnoughts that would be required to execute a mission like this if things get really bad. Meaning, they would have to build an invasion force and train new personnel and equip the personnel along with testing the equipment beforehand before they can even execute. And this is going to take a lot of effort, a lot of materials, and a lot of time. Once calculated out, the fastest time anybody could come up with was 53 human years. Hearing this, Hank immediately jumped to his feet with his tail sticking straight up in complete frustration and claimed that the timeline was completely unacceptable, screaming, "Do you understand what is happening to my people? My species are enchained, being abused, and they're dying while you do nothing to aid them. I've seen your fleet. You have more than enough firepower to destroy the enemy fleet over my planet. You have enough ships, men to take the planet, yet you sit and only think about your self-interest. What of my people? Do you not care about their suffering?" Another council member, this one from the Mars, stands up and gets their attention, addressing Hank directly. "It is because we care that you are even in this room. We care, so we make plans. We care as we prepare to risk our lives to liberate your people. If you want us to no longer give a shit, we can do that. We can simply do nothing. If you want us to do nothing, then keep shooting your mouth off, asshole." Bill then stands up and gets everybody's attention, trying to calm everything as the whole room had just erupted as everybody talked amongst themselves. But as Bill stands there, he waits. "I would like to address the council," he said in a very booming voice. This was a true sign of respect as he stands tall, unmoving in that solid black suit, and is enough for the chairwoman to strike her gavel several times, calming everyone down and claiming that they recognize Bill from the family fleet. After thanking the chairwoman, he turned right towards Hank. He said, "Mr. Hank, we understand your emotion. Truly, truly we do. Yet you must understand our situation as well. Our anonymity in this universe has been our greatest ally, continues to do so. It's also our greatest defense against the darkness out there. We know very little of our foes, aside from what our AI counterparts have been able to inform us," saying this as his hand is reaching out towards Aya. "Tactically speaking, we know very, very little. Yet we can gauge much off their logistics. The ores they have mined, the amount of such ores, the type of cargo that is ferried, the locations which they are carried to. All this tells us we could go to your world guns blazing for sure, yet we would draw the attentions of societies that are obsessed with avarice, with greed, with the idea of possession. You're correct that we could assault now, but it would be sloppy. This would lead to more of your people getting caught in the crossfire and possibly damaging your world irreparably. Though you may hate our methods, Yet we here are neither arrogant nor stupid. We are far, far too old for that crap. This is also something you have been told already, but I'll inform you again. We humans are good at certain things, and one of them we are very good at is war. We've been practicing it on each other since before written histories. The fact that we have not torn ourselves apart is simply due to our new tech and our counterparts, those that arrived in the ships, digital and organic. With our expansion as well, we've been too busy dealing with this to fight amongst ourselves, yet the desire for it and our proficiency has never gone away. Example, even as that harvester attacked, we combined 5 armies, 5 full fleets that had never worked together before, to stop something that should have been unbeatable, and now it serves us as resources that we can exploit, as it was unable to touch our planet. Why? Because we're that good. Yet to be this good, you can't be stupid. You can't rush it. And to that end, to this council, I have a proposal. Since my family fleet is almost exclusively made up of salvaged ships, I recommend that my fleet be the one to bring salvage materials to the planets and colonies. This will free all other ships from all the other planets and colonies, as well as personnel, to focus on the construction of this invasion fleet, the training of forces, and the acquiring of other materials needed, along with creation of materials needed. What say you? Bill then sits down and waits as he hears whispers going all over the room. Eventually, a representative from Earth actually stands up. This will make you extremely wealthy, as you charge fees for this, yes? That will have no limit, I'm sure. This is an issue that must be addressed and fully settled before any vote is cast. Bill turns to Aya for a moment, talks to her for maybe a few seconds. Then, as they both nod, he stands up and says, "We shall lock our fee to 2% total costs, payable not only in currency, but as resources from the salvage itself if necessary, say if currency is unavailable. Is that acceptable?" The Earth rep, not buying anything, says, "You will not negotiate for higher percentage in the future, I'm sure." Bill grins a little bit, says, "Given the amount to be transported, this is going to be more than enough. This is even shown as proof, as my fleet is exclusively commanded by family. This limits our growth in vessels. As long as our current salvage rights from when the dumpers arrive is not altered, there is no reason for me nor my family to demand more, and I'll put it in writing." It doesn't take long before the deal is struck with one additional provision. Any big-ass cargo haulers, as everybody calls them, that arrives via scrapper or dumper will be given priority salvage to Bill's family until the invasion has been concluded. With this, Bill consults with Aya again for approximately 3 seconds. Then he stands up and says, "Well bargained and done." And with this, as we all know, it's time to get to work. That's what everybody does. Everybody gets to work creating 2 of the largest space docks ever constructed, each one built in sections so that the ship will always have a fabricator close by. Each one is set up to create a particular type of ship as well. Once fully set up, each one of these creates parts and makes it the ability to assemble them incredibly fast. In fact, faster than most people had figured. Other space docks are built as well, but none as grandiose. Frigates, destroyers, cruisers, and battleships are all being constructed. Almost all of these facilities for building the ships are made in 0G. Reason being is it's always better to build the larger ships up where it's easy to construct them, as very, very, very large pieces have to be moved around. However, this means that you need to get it also off-world once it's constructed, and the amount of thrust needed to actually lift up a battleship can leave a scar on the planet for years. On planets like Mars and Venus, Corvette-class ships are built and launched so fast that it looks like bees leaving their hive. It isn't long at all before humans build vessels outnumbering the salvage vessels, first at 2-1, then 3-1, then even in time nobody expected but 4-1. And the fact that there were so many ships moving so much personnel, so much material, allowing people to train so much faster, this sped up construction and training time even more. It was estimated at one point that humanity would not be ready for first strike for 53 years. As it turns out, the bean counters forgot about another factor: humanity's desire to go pick a fight. The fleet is built, equipped, stocked, and manned in 35 human years, well ahead of schedule. This is primarily due to the sacrifice of those that would gladly work 80 hours straight or longer just to get the work done. The cargo haulers that did not seem to rest the entire time, bring the materials needed to create such ships as fast as they possibly can. The supporters that made sure that the crews were correctly fed. And, of course, the sheer rage at the oppressors of their newcomer friends. As the ships departed for their mission, once again, those not leaving formed around them and wished everyone well in the conflict. They stand in respect, in solidarity with them. Aboard a single Earth transport ship, if one was to look close, they would see a female foxy lady as she held her daughter in her hand. This happened to be the only child so far produced from a human and a newcomer getting together and doing the bow chicka bow wow. Though it's well noted that when everybody heard that the man who mated with the newcomer was from Japan, the entire world collectively said, "I fucking knew it." Yet it also meant that the newcomers were now truly part of humanity now. There was living, breathing proof in front of everybody. As the fleet jumped away, Bill is a bit upset that he couldn't go with them, yet he has other priorities. He had decided that even though he had pushed it away for so long, now was the time to become a father. His children were artificially created with the absolute best tech they have. Aya even added just a little bit of herself. Neither his son nor daughter are green, by the way, but she did alter the eyes, as they both would have had gray eyes, just like their father. She didn't take that away, but instead added a ring of that piercing blue that she has in her own eyes. They were on the bridge too with Bill and Aya as the ships jumped away into the darkness of the space. Bill turned to both and said, "All right, let's get back to work." As the children turned to leave, he yells, "Hey, just remember, after morning lessons, you got combat training this afternoon, so for lunch it would be a good idea not to indulge too much. I'd rather not have to clean up the dojo again." In a sector unknown to humanity until recently, a sector they now call the Zoro sector, there is a planet, the second planet from the star, that seems to almost shimmer and shine in the darkness of space. This would look like a true jewel in space if it wasn't for the fact that there's an entire battle group in orbit. The world is full of colorful flora, small fauna that are very quick and they jump around all the time. However, there's nothing there that will actually cause damage, nothing to kill you. There's a constant temperate climate as though you were living in Hawaii, with air that is extremely oxygen-rich. Yet this jewel has been tainted. If one was to look close, they would see that the local population moves with their heads down as they fight the weight of metal collars around their necks. They dare not look at the reptilians in the eye as they fear a sudden, inescapable injury. Looking through, you might see a small group of indigenous children as they are approached by one of these reptilian aliens. This large male picks up one of the young boys from the group and seems to inspect it as all the others pause for a second, seeing if they're next. Inspecting it over and over again, this reptilian suddenly seems content as he prepares to leave and have some entertainment as the child realizes what's going on and begins to freak out and squirm in his claw. That is when the entire reptilian population receives a message on their data pads, a message that all of them realize has an emergency tone to it. They pick it up, and he reads it in one hand, and then suddenly drops the boy and runs off into the distance like all the rest. Approximately 21 minutes ago, in the orbit direction of Zoro 2, a massive number of ships arrive, seemingly out of every single direction, yet they end up in one location. Once this armada is formed up, which only takes about a minute, they move as one towards the planet that is in its rotation going towards them. As they approach, a message is sent out in the newcomer's language, sent out for all to hear. Attention occupational forces. Your occupation of this planet has concluded. You have until this fleet reaches the planet to vacate said planet. Leave all the local flora and fauna behind. If you refuse to willingly vacate the planet and its associated sector, you will be considered a hostile and will be treated as one. This is your only warning and your only chance to leave peacefully. Do yourselves a favor and just leave. The occupational forces sent out so many responses that they all seemed to merge into one. If one was listening, they would hear phrases as, "How dare you? What right do you think you have? You should surrender instead. Willingly face judgment. Insolence." But what seemed to get many in a bit of a bind was hearing primitive, useless, obsolete, and of course, ugly ships. While all these messages went out, the occupational fleet quickly formed up and they tried to call for reinforcements, only to find out that their communications had been jammed, as in jammed completely. They could send something to the planet, but it would be garbled. Even sending from ship to ship is almost impossible, and they couldn't figure out how this was done. What they didn't see was a bunch of interdictor ships, all of them Corvette class, that had jumped in separately. These ships had timed it correctly so that the electrogravimetric pulse from the jump is confused as simple ether bounce. This allows these ships to be completely hidden as they jam everything going out of the system, and since all these fields were overlapping, nobody could speak inside the field at all. Inside the crown ship, the enemy's version of a true capital ship, the captain realized something is wrong, very wrong. Yet he still wants to teach these flying foxes in flying bricks a lesson, believing that they are the newcomer species, as that is the language that came through. Screaming to the rest of the ship, "Show them your beauty in battle! Leave these creatures as hideous as they are insolent!" This is one of the few messages that actually sent through. The human fleet didn't answer any hails as they continued forward. The enemy forces powered weapons and full disruptor fields. Seeing this, every human captain simply laughed. They understood what was going on. Disruptor fields are used to break up energy-based weapons, and they can also scramble the targeting systems of incoming ordnance. A full field like this one Works great against energy weapons, breaking the beam so much that it will not even scratch the paint. It will also fry any unshielded ordnance that's coming through the field. The issue, though, is that it's a massive power drain. This means that if they're going to use the shields at full power like this, they will either need to lower their shields for a full 30 seconds before firing to make sure they can fire at full strength, or fire at a much, much lower yield. The human ships also raise their disruptor shields, however, at a much, much lower setting. Also only activating the shields at the bow of the ship, as they had nobody behind them. The occupation ships still demand that the approaching humans surrender, saying, "If you know what's good for you." Human ships had cut all communications, which seemed to agitate the situation to the point of hearing the occupation fleet scream into their comm systems, "Answer me! Answer me, dang you!" Yet, there was no reason to. At that point, the first shots came from the occupation fleet itself. Their primary weapons are in fact energy-based, as everybody figured, and they're also fixed weapons. Since these are energy-based, the human disruptor fields dispersed most of the beams, leaving simply a warm spot on the hull, or perhaps a small streak on the side of the ship. Yet, there's no real damage from the strike. On top of all this, the percentage of impacts is only 16%, as each of the human ships actually began evasive maneuvers the moment they read the energy spike. Number of lost human ships at this point? 0.0. Aboard most human ships, everybody laughed, saying, "That's it? Seriously, is that all they got?" Then rotated their turrets as they locked on to the enemy forces and dropped the disruptor shields entirely as they didn't need them and fired their ballistic turrets. Though in comparison to energy weapons, there's a 1.8 seconds delay to impact, the results to the occupying fleet were devastating. Each of the turreted shots strikes the target. In their arrogance, the occupation forces didn't even try to evade, thinking they could just tank the shots. The results vary from a grazing strike that kind of looks like they ripped the hull plating, almost like the Titanic, to a direct shot to the bridge, blowing it clean off. Also, there's a few that were absolutely perfect center mass strikes that skewered the ship from bow to stern, which of course destroys the engine, creating an overload and then an explosion that sends debris all over the place. As the occupation forces charge their weapons to send another volley, which, as it turns out, takes much longer as they refuse to drop their disruptor shields. This delay allowed the turreted cannons from the human fleet to fire 3 or 4 more volleys in their direction. Inside the monitoring stations on the paradise world of Zoro 2, the reptilians look on in horror as their fleet, in all its grandiose splendor, is being torn apart so easily by some ugly flying bricks. What's worse is that these ugly boats are using such primitive weapons to do so. They continue to watch as this fleet of flying bricks casually floats through the debris field that was once their defense fleet. As several smaller vessels break formation to attach themselves to the broken hulks, a message is sent out to the entire planet. The message reads, "Invasion imminent. Defense fleet annihilated. Approaching forces have offered mercy for immediate evacuation of all non-organic personnel, provided no local flora or fauna is removed from the planet. All government personnel required to evacuate within 0.52 planetary rotations, no exceptions. All other personnel evacuate immediately for your own protection. All that remain will be considered lost by our standards." This was the message that made everybody on the occupied planet run for their ships. From the humans' perspective, they watched these ships fire up into space, and it looked like rats leaving a burning building. As soon as they're clear of the gravity wells, they try to jump away, but end up having to skip across because the jamming field seems to have issue with their jump drives. As the human fleet settles above lunar orbit as to avoid both moons of this planet, they begin scanning the planet. They scan the planet by linking inside all the different technology. Through this, the AI are able to hack into all the video feeds and sensor systems on the entire planet. As it turns out, only 2 areas still have reptilians, and they're both digging in, mainly by forcing the local population to set up some sort of hasty defenses. Aboard the flagship, standing next to Admiral Nelson, Hank was more than a bit agitated seeing his people in such conditions. What drove his frustration even higher is the fact that he cannot see the Admiral's face. He cannot judge what the Admiral is thinking, nor the faces of the rest of the crew. Per orders, they all wore full bodysuits, not only for anonymity's sake, but also to protect them in case there was a blowout, as nobody knew how bad the fight actually would be. Given the body language, the Admiral seemed completely unaffected with Hank's badgering as he calmly gave the locations of the 2 holdouts, both being personal villas. He assigned a single platoon to drop to each of these locations. Hank tried to override the orders, actually reaching for the controls as he wanted a complete full invasion of the planet, but he was immediately warned that if he tried to do that again, he would be removed from the bridge and he would be spending the rest of the invasion inside the brig. Across the fleet, though most of the forces are upset with the idea that all their preparation only for a select few to deploy, well, there was actually some relief, not just annoyance. If only a pair of platoons are needed, it must be that the battle went even better than they had hoped. On the ground, whips crack as the local population is being forced to set up the hasty barriers around these buildings. These ones holding the whips or sending shocks via collars are clearly nervous, as their species usually doesn't sweat, but this time they're pouring perspiration, which gives the locals just a little bit of hope as they simply toil away. That is, the moment of hope that literally fell from the skies as drop pods come screaming down and slow down just enough on their descent to crash into the ground without compressing the pod or what's inside. They land very, very close to the villas, just a few dozen meters. After a brief moment, the doors are launched, flying off forward, knocking down anything in front of them, and everyone is left completely stunned as they watch what looks like mechanical bipeds step out. As they do, everyone again gets nervous, seeing multiple extensions come out, making as though this biped has 6 arms. The first platoon to land ends up encircling the entire villa. These on the outside are in shock. The human sees them as they all step out with their exosuits on. Once clear of the pod, everything on the back and shoulders is in mounted gear, and the thruster pack extend, which allows them to move freely as they move towards the building. The locals see this and immediately cower as they believe that these new invaders are going to do something bad, and they sit there holding themselves down as they prepare to feel the ouch. Instead, these mechanical-looking creatures simply either step around or jump completely over to get at the reptilians. The reptilians run like they're scared little bitches into the house, screaming for others to protect them. They do not get far before being caught in a mechanized clamp of a human hand. Some freeze at this moment, some resist and flail around, and some even piss themselves. But at that point, At least for that area, the battle is over with no shots fired. The second platoon to land actually receives resistance in the form of some sort of pulse energy weapons. The soldiers respond by instantly and effectively firing back. The locals that had just been building the defenses can do nothing but freeze as energy blasts and projectiles streak past them with unwavering professional precision. All those on the outside that were not local to this planet end up bleeding all over the nice clean floors they have. Upon entering the villa, a late developing reptilian jumped at one of the soldiers with a bladed weapon. Before the blade could strike, the soldier parries the strike, knocking the blade out of its claws, and lifts the male by the throat up so high that his head is almost touching the ceiling. The male starts screaming as he lashes out with his claws and tail, impacts on the armor that do absolutely no damage. Through the translation, the human in the suit can hear things like, "You primitive beast! You have no right to touch me! These are my toys and I do as I please. You cannot take them! They're mine! I do as I please, and you cannot stop me! Release me, or surrender! You are beneath me, you dull creature, and I will not be bullied by—" He didn't get a chance to finish that thought, as the human inside the suit realized this young one was way beyond redemption. Raising his other arm that was not holding this reptilian by the throat, the human activated a device on his free arm. At that moment, a blaze of fire engrossed the reptilian's head with flames so hot that the boy's brains cooked inside his skull in less than 5 seconds. After which, the boy was unceremoniously dropped onto the floor as his head still smoldered. Within an hour, shuttles had landed with newcomers that had brought food and medical supplies down to those that had been oppressed. They also brought the technology needed to safely remove any of the control collars that were still on. Over the next 5 months, supplies are shuttled in, treatment is given for injuries, governance is set up. The remnants of the occupation fleet has been salvaged, which included the rescue of over 200 crew. And these crew will find a new home on Zoro too, as they set up their own culture as they help rebuild. All this time, the humans remained in their suits, only speaking through translators. Most of the locals believe that these are actually robots until they see how they move and seem to have just the slightest bit of inflection in their voice. Once it's clear that their new foxy friends are able to sustain themselves, the human fleet prepares to leave, though not all of them. Several very specific ships remain as they still need to protect this planet, as well as salvage a lot of the materials. Before leaving, the foxy friends show how grateful they are for the assistance by trying to feed the humans some of the local cuisine or trying to have them stay or anything. Even some of the young adopt the human hug, gripping onto the cold metal of the suit in their way of expressing gratitude. This does make a few want to stay, but the dangers of even being out of the suit and possibly being identified by the other species was just far too great. As the majority of the fleet jumps away, aboard a dreadnought left behind to protect the planet, Admiral Yu Sun Sin sits in the command couch, ready to finally remove that helmet he's been wearing for the past couple of days. He mentally reminds himself to let the entire crew know that after today, they no longer have to wear the full bodysuits when they're aboard ship. Since there's no enemy in the area, it's not a reason to actually wear it anymore. Plus, they're not going back down to the planet. A planet that the Admiral looks down on. A planet that he's assigned to protect. He looks at it in all its pastel beauty. That's the moment his AI shows up in its digital form and says, "Finally, the mission is over. It's finished." The Admiral reaches up to remove his helmet as he responds, "No, I think it's just getting started." Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today on part 5 of this ongoing series. Now before I go, I need to mention today's winner is Chris Dixon. And I also need to send out some big thank yous to the supporters of the channel, and those will be Prozac and Pancakes, Sir, Brian Kemp, SS Demon, MTF Guard, Douglas Scarborough, Erica Gem, Joseph Blush, and Guardian Sage. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, ejecting.